Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. My name is Jennifer Richards, and I'm the chair of the English Association, and I'm very pleased to be hosting this session. The English Association is a learned society and subject association which was founded in 1906 to promote, support, and celebrate the discipline of English studies. We cover all stages of education, from primary and early years through to secondary and further education, to higher education and beyond. We also cover all parts of the discipline across languages, linguistics, literature, and creative writing. Events like this one are made possible by the fantastic contribution of our volunteer speakers. So thank you to today's speakers, Ewan Fernie, Tom Epps, Mohammed Ali, Indy Diol, and Rebecca Ledyard, and our chair, Claire Lees. Our members make it possible to keep these events free and open to all by paying their membership fees. If you would like to contribute to the national conversation about English and help support our discipline, please consider joining us. We love having you members as part of the conversation. It costs around £1 per week to support our events and campaigning work for a whole year, and you get access to a range of member benefits, including online access to all our journals. Now it's my pleasure to hand over to today's speakers for our discussion, Everything for Everybody. And I'm handing over to you, Claire, first. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. My name is Claire Lees. I'm the director of the Institute of English Studies, which is only 25 years old, as opposed to the august English Association, which is well over its centenary. However, the English Association works very closely with the IES, the Institute of English Studies, and the Institute of English Studies exists to promote, advance, advocate and support research in English studies, broadly defined, wherever it is found. So we're particularly excited to work with the English Association today to think, and in this series, to think about how collaboration advances the thinking of our field and where we can best learn from collaborators in these fields. So today, I think the best title ever, Everything to Everybody. We're going to learn about a particularly exciting project across different media, led in Birmingham. I'm just going to very briefly introduce each of the speakers, and then I think the turn they're going to speak, then I'm going to turn it over to them. They're going to go in sequence. I'll ask a few questions at the end, and we'll open it up for discussion. And I'm really honoured to have everybody here today. It's going to be an exciting event, and as Jenny has already said, this is recorded and will be available on the website afterwards. So without further ado, our speakers, we're kicking off with Ewan Fernie, who is chair and professor at the Shakespeare Institute at Birmingham. Then we're moving to Tom Epps, who's the senior librarian services manager at the Library of Birmingham. Then we're moving to Mo Ali, who is now back with us, I think, briefly, who is the founder and artistic director of Soul City Arts. Then we will move to Rebecca Ledyard, who is Director of Education and Participation at Birmingham's ex-cathedra choir. And then we will end with Indy Diol, who is Director of De Siblitz. Who is Director of De Siblitz. So we have we have magazines, online magazines, we have singing, we have music, we have books, we have practices. And with that, I will hand over to Ewan to get us going. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, Jennifer. I mean, we're delighted to collaborate with the English Association of the Institute for English Studies. And I'm also delighted to appear with my collaborators on the Everything to Everybody project today. So the Everything to Everybody project was a National Lottery Heritage Fund funded project which ran for 3 years plus one, because we got a sort of COVID rebate, as it were. And what we did was we attempted to, and I think substantially did, revive what is the first great Shakespeare library in the world. in Birmingham, held in Birmingham by and for the people of Birmingham. I just want to very quickly, for my part, just to mention that the historical inspiration for this and the sort of hero for it was its original visionary founder, George Dawson, who came to Birmingham in 1844 and was a bit of a revolutionary. He was involved in the 1848 revolutions. He was wanted by Dresden police and so forth, but sort of turned another way towards what the great thinker, the German student movement, Rudi Dutschke, called the Long March Through Institutions. And Dawson sort of invented modern municipal government, and Asa Briggs has celebrated him for that. But what hadn't been said really was that he had a kind of Shakespearean vision. So he founded this great public Shakespeare collection, which is still the largest Shakespeare collection held in any public library in the world. But he also had a vision of a new kind of city that would share something of Shakespeare's vitality and pluralism and inclusiveness. And he wanted to invent a city and wanted to collaborate, I should say, with others in Birmingham in order to make a city as beautiful and forward-looking as Shakespeare's plays. So that's all I'm going to say for the moment. I'm going to hand over to my main collaborator at Birmingham City Council, Tom Epps.
Hi. Thanks, Ewan. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the collection itself at Birmingham. So as part of the Everything to Everybody project, the team had to come up with a concise phrase that succinctly described the significance of the Birmingham Shakespeare collection. And as Ewan's just mentioned, we came up with the world's first great public Shakespeare library. And as with any strapline, each of those words do quite a lot of work. And in particular, the words world's first, great, and public reflect three characteristics that really make the Shakespeare collection at Birmingham unique. So in terms of its size and scope, it truly is one of the world's great Shakespeare collections. It includes over 100,000 items stored on around 1,000 shelves, includes books, journals, scripts, music scores, photographs, illustrations, newspaper cuttings, playbills, theatre programmes, posters, prompt books, diaries, videos, letters, and works of art. Birmingham's the only city in the UK with its own first folio, and we've also got the second, third, and fourth folios too. Our 19th century holdings, they're particularly strong. We've got 800 editions of the complete works. And to put it another way, that means we've got a new edition that was published every 6 weeks for an entire century. So it genuinely is a really great collection. The second characteristic that makes the Birmingham Shakespeare collection special, and again Ewan's just mentioned this, is the particular circumstances of its foundation. It was the world's first significant public Shakespeare library. Library authorities were first established in the UK by the Public Libraries Act in 1850, and Manchester was a sort of trailblazing city, and it had the first public library. Undoubtedly, they will have had Shakespeare books, but in no way could what they had be considered a significant collection. In 1861, George Dawson proposed the establishment of the world's first comprehensive public Shakespeare library in Birmingham. That's now understood as part of his civic gospel, and the Shakespeare Library in Birmingham was conceived to rival any private or university collection. But unlike those closed libraries, this one would be explicitly for all the people of Birmingham, irrespective of their wealth, education, or background. That was literally a world first. So finally, as a public library, the Birmingham Shakespeare Collection has a legal duty under the 1964 Public Libraries and Museums Act to be accessible and relevant to everybody who lives, works, and studies in Birmingham. And so for me, that's really the starting point of the Everything to Everybody project. It was a sort of practical exploration of how the resources and expertise of the university could help us revitalise a Shakespeare collection and find ways of genuinely and materially reconnecting that collection with the people who own it. And those are all the citizens of Birmingham. So building connections to the city, its people and communities was absolutely fundamental to the Everything to Everybody project. And we knew from the very start that we'd need to go well beyond the sort of worlds of universities and libraries if we're going to genuinely engage wider and broader audiences with the Shakespeare collection. Collaboration communities and organisations across the city had to be at the very heart of the Everything to Everybody project. So I guess that rather neatly takes me on to handing over to three of the project's most significant collaborators. That's Mohammed, Rebecca, and Indy. So I'll hand over to Mohammed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Everyone hear me okay? Hopefully you hear me. I'm gonna share screen from the start. Everyone hear me okay? Is that all right? Yeah, great. Thank you, Tom. I'm gonna quickly go through what my contribution was. My name is Mohammed Ali, and I was born in an area called Sparkbrook in Birmingham. My parents migrated here to the city of Birmingham, which is known historically for many things, including a city of 1,000 trades and the industry and the factories that brought a lot of immigrants, especially from the South Asian from South Asia. And on the one end of Stratford Road, you have this very community that I was born in, and it's transformed over the past 70 years or so with a lot of the immigrant communities that are now settled, including my family that came here in the late 50s. And it was just really fascinating for me that on one end of Stratford Road, you have a different world entirely. It takes you to the birthplace of Shakespeare. And I think that was one of the things that really myself and you, and we connected on and explored that, how you have these quite different worlds really, and actually Shakespeare, and how can it kind of connect with communities like the one that I was born and raised into, and especially your younger people, and how we can connect with younger people. This is a picture of how myself and Ewan went on this journey of trying to take to the people this folio and what it actually meant, Shakespeare's folio, and the valuable this manuscript, these pages, this book that you can see here, actually to communities from my background of being of Muslim faith. The idea of having a very sacred, special, like dusty old book that has this magic associated with it is actually something very familiar to them, such as the Quran, the holy book that is for the Muslim community, including myself, that is on that top shelf in the house, and actually taking that into the school. Well, it wasn't the original, but it was, I believe, a reproduction, of course. But it was something that really fascinated, and the children were really excited by. What I was brought in to do as a creative kind of an artist, mainly as a mural painter, was to bring in a crew of artists that using things like manga animation to be able to kind of convey to the young people about telling their own story, what Shakespeare, how that can connect with them in a way, about the empowering them to tell their own stories, especially in a society perhaps where they feel their voices aren't heard in kind of largely kind of marginalized communities. And that was something that I was, from my own experience, of course, but also being able to talk to the kids of today about how they can kind of get their voice heard. And it resulted in a series of workshops, manga, anime, spoken word poetry through some of my team here. You can see exploring with language, and then eventually the magic of murals. This is the wall beforehand, don't worry, not before, and then afterwards, right? And you can see here this mural of a quote that we know what we are, but but not what we may be. You can see that in the mural there, and the side of the school that myself and the young children painted this mural of Shakespeare in the form of a graffiti mural. We then went on to another wall very close by, again, another before and after shot of, this was the result of draw thy breath in pain to tell my story from Hamlet. Again, just kind of exploring how street art and the language of the spray can and the kind of urban street art, and how we can kind of, I guess, interpret and bring in kind of Shakespeare into the realms of street art and of what the language of youth today. So I will end there. It's just a bit of a quick whistle-stop tour of what we tried to do through street art and the language of the youth, and how we can kind of connect Shakespeare and make it relevant to kind of urban, young, inner city people living in the inner city of Birmingham. Thank you.
I think that's me then. I'm Rebecca Ledyard from Ex Cathedra, and we connect here with our Singing Playgrounds project. Now, I always start with singing in everything I do, so you're going to hear some deliberately muddled Shakespeare words in the spirit of Bottom being muddled. I fear I'll never hear again sweet sounds that give delight. Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises, Be not afeard, the world is full of voices. Forgive, I've got a cold today, forgive me. Our passion is that singing is such a good thing, and we'd been working on our Singing Playgrounds project in Birmingham for about 20 years when Ewan and I were, it's 20 years now, but Ewan and I obviously were speaking towards Everything to Everybody starting up. And we started to talk about how our work was sharing some values around things being child-centered, child-led, children's agency very much involved in this. It was imaginative play, it was inclusive, it was enabling children to collaborate so that they could share their own singing games, their own heritage through singing play, and create their own singing play. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a journey through our project, and it involved eventually 5 videos in the culmination, all inspired by Shakespeare, his lines, his characters, and playing with the idea of imagination and agency. So I'm going to show you a few seconds of each one. The first one came about because, just like I was singing there, I fear I'll never hear again sweet sounds that give delight, children's voices. Of course, this all took off in the pandemic, and there was some silver linings of this for us, but there were also extreme challenges, not least the fact that singing was silenced, singing stopped, it was heartbreaking. At one point, singing was illegal, and our whole world was about children singing together. So we took the inspiration from this Be Not Afeard, the Isle is Full of Noises. I'll just show you a few clips of this as I share the sound. So this is where we started, Be Not Afeard.
Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises.
That's where we started. We then started working with some children, wonderful children in Anderton Park Primary School, and their head teacher was particularly passionate about Shakespeare and how it could unlock imagination within children. So we worked on a Like to the Lark of break of day, your words sing out to me. Forgive my voice today. And this was to celebrate at the same time as Shakespeare's birthday. And so once here we have the song that the children learned and worked on. Right at the end, they wish Shakespeare a happy birthday. Come to the 337. Similar sound world, a kind of now inspired world.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Shakespeare. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Shakespeare. Happy birthday, Mr. Shakespeare. Happy birthday inside William Shakespeare.
Ci si presenting Shakespeare.
Tanti auguri a te, Mr. Shakespeare. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Shakespeare. Happy birthday, Mr. Shakespeare from home.
So as we started to draw these ideas together, we then started to work on developing this idea of children singing play and their agency and being inspired by how they can make the world a better place, which led to our Unity music video, and the children actually saying how they want the world to be a better place. So in the middle of this, you can start to see children, they're playing together inspired by Singing Playgrounds, but they're also saying their own ideas of how to make this world a better place as we live together.
Stop using your home internet. This is the reason why I've canceled my internet service provider subscription. This brand new port.
And then we finished with Time to Wake, which was performed by our children in the Bullring for the big festival. And in that one, they gave their ideas about how to make the world a better place. Filmed partly in the Shakespeare Room, partly in Birmingham, and children start hope. There we go. Thank you very much. Whistle Stop Tour. All those videos are available if you want to watch all of them on the YouTube Singing Schools.
Thank you, Rebecca. I wish I could start off by singing, but unfortunately I don't have Rebecca's voice, and I'll probably lose a few attendees on this one, so I'm not going to attempt it. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about what we did and how we engaged with this project. So Disability itself, we're we're an online magazine, and we champion South Asian voices, South Asian literature, media, and also cultural engagement. And quite early on throughout this project, one of the things that we really thought we wanted to do was to engage the audiences that we have here in Birmingham and beyond, and also to engage them in a different type of way, a way that we hadn't done in the past, which was to kind of engage them with Shakespeare and his legacy and what he did. So we began thinking about different ideas and how we could do that. Myself being a British Asian and watching some of the old Bollywood films, I know that Bollywood played a really big part in my childhood, and I could also see that there's a lot of Shakespeare in the films that I was watching. So films like Ram Leela, for instance, which is Romeo and Juliet. We've got Heder, which is Hamlet, Gamet Se Gamet, and the list goes on and on. So hundreds of films are actually produced with the basis of Shakespeare and Shakespeare's plays and adaptations, and were made into Bollywood films. But we just didn't have the glue. So what we wanted to do was trying to think of a way how can we really connect them to the community that we have here. And one of the things that we came up with was a truck art bus, which is it's kind of trucks buses that you'd see in India or in Pakistan, for instance. But we wanted to bring it here, which was a bit of a wacky idea, but we thought it would be great to do that. So we began to try and source one, and unfortunately, there's a funny story. I'll share it with you briefly, but the bus that we were originally trying to hire, it wouldn't get through with certain issues, and it couldn't get through the MOT, for instance, and we couldn't hire it on the actual event. So we again began to think and brainstorm, and we thought, well, let's create our own bus. So one of the fantastic things that came out from this actual project was the Disabilities Truck Art Bus, which we now use for lots of engagement with schools, taking Shakespeare and Bollywood into schools and universities and colleges, in fact. And using the truck art bus as a way to bridge, and Bollywood as a way to bridge Shakespeare into the communities. What I'll do now, I'll just share a quick 1-minute video of an event that we actually did here in Birmingham in the Bullring, which will just give you a bit of flavor around the actual event, and also a little bit about the bus. You'll get to see the bus in this. So just bear with me while I just share this video. Okay, so as you could see, it was quite a fun day. We had Shakespeare being presented in Urdu, in Punjabi, in Bengali. We had authors that were talking about their work and the stories that were also being told, and then obviously Bhangra itself with the great Gurcharan Mal, who was doing the door drumming. And what it really showed throughout the day was that Shakespeare is for everyone, and can be interpreted in lots of different ways. You know, on the day there was lots of conversations, sparked a lot of interest around, you know, the films that had been produced, but also just how relevant it is to younger generations. And that's something that we really wanted to get through with this project, is that Shakespeare is still relevant and continues to be, especially within Asian and South Asian backgrounds. But we also, again, in a new and accessible way, made it available through that, you know, through the Truck Art Bus. And the first volley obviously is still a sacred treasure. So yeah, that's a little bit about us and what we do.
Thanks so much, Ewan, Tom, Mohammed, Indy, and Rebecca. That was fabulous. I just want to sort of give everybody a round of applause. Please do post questions in the chat and raise your hands to ask a question if you so wish. I'm going to kick off while people are thinking about this. I'm blown away by this project. I imagine that's the response that you have quite often. And I can see how well you have kind of coordinated and curated this presentation. It's really impressive. And that speaks to a degree of collaboration that I think you've developed across the five of you. So if I could start with a kind of very broad question, it may go to Ewan and Tom first, but please, the others jump in. It's fairly obvious why you wanted to do this project, but how did you engage the particular partners that you wanted? How did that collaboration actually come about? Maybe I'll start with you in the first instance.
Sure. No, thanks, Claire. Well, yeah, absolutely, and that was a big question for us, of course. And we Tom and I and our other collaborators on the project. There's a big team, of course, who can't be present here and who deserve a lot of credit for all of this. But we Tom and I speak for ourselves at the moment, and we knew that we couldn't ourselves reach into every bit of Birmingham. We knew that it would just fail if we tried, however much we wanted to do so. So that's sort of what we started with, and I'll just say a couple of little things, then I'll hand over to Tom. I mean, one thing we realized, I think, quite early on, Tom, was that it needed to be a federated project. So we needed people like Mohammed and Rebecca and Indy and many other people. We had more than 60 organizations we were collaborating with. And we knew in order to get into Sparkbrook, we'd need to work with Mohammed. I couldn't have done it alone. So it was from the start, we had a federating ambition. So that's one thing I'd say. And then a second thing I'd say, which was sort of serendipity, we ran a few consultations in the library and we invited lots of different people. And it's not easy actually to get everybody even into a city centre, which is something I had to learn, let alone into a library, let alone to talk about Shakespeare. So we did a few of these things, and then it was hard work administratively and getting it all to happen. And I hadn't had much time to think about the script on that day. And Tom and I sort of fronted it. And the first thing I said to people is, this is yours. Tom had got some fantastic stuff out. It's an amazing collection. And actually I hadn't really thought to say that. I simply said it. And that, I think, became a kind of, we realized that was a lucky fluke, because I wasn't a Shakespeare professor, Tom wasn't the library manager. We started with the people and the stuff, and that really worked for us from that point on. So I'm going to just, as much as I could say more, I don't want to hear from other people, so I'm going to hand over to Tom now.
Yeah, I guess so. One of the big challenges about this collection, so this collection's existed for 150 years. And for the first century of that, it was very well used. The then library and that part of the university lived next door to each other, so there was this sort of tight collaboration, organic collaboration, really, between those two institutions about really utilizing those resources. However, those institutions moved physically, and priorities at the library definitely changed. We increasingly, from 1960s, definitely on through the 70s and 80s, we were focused more on, engaging young kids with just literacy or helping people set up businesses. Priorities changed. And so we had this, when I met Ewan, we had this incredible collection, and yet hardly anybody really knew about it. And very, very few people were actually using it. I think in 2017, only 7 people actually requested any material from that collection. So from a public library perspective, we're failing there. We're not really delivering and connecting with the people who own this stuff, you know, the people of Birmingham. And exactly as Ewan said, as a library, you know, you can hold the stuff, you can open your doors, but we didn't have the resources or the expertise to really push it out, to really engage, to find out how people might be interested in something which is quite a historic, maybe, you know, not an immediate connection for a lot of people. So drawing together the sort of the expertise of the university with that collection, and then doing that through all of these different, I think there were about 50 different partners across the project, each of them very differently positioned, different parts of Birmingham, different strengths, different connections to different audiences. It's only working through that sort of collaborative, broad approach that I think we were really successful in genuinely reconnecting that collection with large parts of Birmingham.
I have to say, in one of the films, I caught sight of a first folio in a shopping centre, which is something just kind of wonderful and joyful about that. Also, the first folio, the facsimile in the classroom, the visual media, the words spun into film and into sound, I thought was particularly impressive. And hugely ambitious, but Mohammed, Indy, and Rebecca, how did you find the collaboration from your end? Because it seems like it was very porous, open, and very available for you to kind of plug into and to take into the directions and add your expertise to. Maybe who wants to start with that? Maybe Rebecca, do you want to jump in with that?
I have to say, I was hugely inspired by this project and really excited by it. But for once, I was stumped. I'm really a person that likes to say, yes, let's do it. But I was stumped at first about how to make this work, because Ewan had said, you know, with your Singing Playgrounds work, which is part of our education participation work in our organisation, that's what we'd like to think about. And I was stumped at how to connect initially children singing, playing the playground to Shakespeare. But then I started thinking, well, there's so many similarities here in that our organisation is first and foremost about choral music. We're singing Bach in the concert halls. So there are some similarities there. And what we're doing here is trying to give agency to children and get them excited. So actually, why can't we extend that to, we're inspired by how Shakespeare was telling stories and the agency he gave to people, and give those kind of ideas and muddled words, again, being inspired by Bottom's muddled speech, you know, the hands and the, and start from there with children. And the children then in turn inspired us. And the outcome of the project was they were literally feeding into us and telling us how we should write the stories and the songs, and we were leaving blank pits in the songs for them to give us their ideas and layer them on. And now we use the songs and always ask the children to write the next layer of harmony, telling us how they want the world to be, or whatever their ideas. So yeah, I could never, and the pandemic obviously then provided us with some silver linings and some challenges, but out of adversity comes creativity. So we're chuffed to bits that we're involved in this, and I'm very pleased I didn't say, I don't know how to make this work, and Ewan went, come on, you can.
So I'm also struck by, and this speaks to one of the questions in the chat, how though these unexpected legacies and outcomes. So the truck art bus, which is a brilliant way of carrying forward some of the work that the project did. But Indy, that came out of a kind of a moment of failure, as it were, and then it restarted. Do you want to just develop that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, sure. As I said, it was something that we wanted to find that kind of missing gap between bridging the community and Shakespeare. Obviously, it's already been mentioned, it's a 400-year-old text. How do we make sure that the young people of today know about it and also, you know, respect it for what it is? You know, the themes of love, revenge, mistaken identities, you know, these are deeply embedded in South Asian culture. You know, we all know this, we all know about Bollywood film, but we sometimes struggle to connect the two. And the truck art bus, you know, was something that because we couldn't get hold of it in another way, we had to just find a way to do it. Otherwise, we'd be in trouble with you and the rest of the guys. But what we really wanted to do was to just really find that missing glue, which is what the truck art bus allows us to do. And the actual bus itself, because it's the way it's been painted, truck art is obviously it's not a huge thing in this country. So we actually called over the world's leading truck artist, Haider Ali from Karachi, who came over and hand painted that bus in the city centre, whilst, you know, audiences were actually watching him putting the paint straight onto the bus. The bus itself was donated to us by National Express, so it's actually an old school bus which was you know, out of action. So again, you know, all the stars kind of lined up, and we were able to get that, and we were able to put the project together. But now it's just a really fantastic way to. The bit I didn't say was that we actually produced an exhibition that was also in the Shakespeare Library in Birmingham, which is on, you know, big boards, where we have images of Bollywood and Shakespeare, and talk about the decades of history that Shakespeare is, and how it first started in India, and how Shakespeare was brought to India and then brought back to this country. So there's a lot of rich history that we now take on the bus and deliver into places of education, just to again bring that all together.
And maybe I can connect that to Mohammed's work and his strand within this project, because I'm really struck by that, not only the kind of multilingual, all these different languages, but also the multimedia elements of the work that you were all doing. But it's very, it struck me very particularly in the case of the anime and manga images, and then the street art. And I think that's a really interesting way of harnessing contemporary arts practices and redirecting them. But please, Mohammed, share some further thoughts about the challenges and opportunities of the work. Or could you put your you need to put your sound.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would say, I mean, what was really exciting, I mean, the title "Everything to Everybody" really resonated with me, especially in a city like Birmingham, where it's still discovering what it is as it fast evolves with changing demographics and how the city has changed, right? So it first of all really struck me as I really welcome that kind of the openness of this project about, you know, defining what this is, you know, everything to everybody, us considering what that means. Who does Shakespeare speak to? I mean, those who haven't seen the Akala video of hip hop and Shakespeare, you know, it's a wonderfully inspiring thing to look at, to explore, you know, how we can kind of make these things accessible. Birmingham is a city that struggles with its identity, you know, always trying to find itself and prove that it is better than Manchester, which makes me cringe all the time. But, you know, this folio and what it means to the city of Birmingham, I mean, it's something, we're missing a trick here if we're not kind of celebrating what we have here. And that I find this project really quite exciting in how we could, you know, this is something to a feather in the cap for Birmingham City, right? In terms of what we have in the city and making it accessible, which is why I loved the openness, again, working with Ewan and his team in trusting us, in looking at ways, and if some of those strands were uncomfortable, that I really welcome that, you know, these strands of themes that we're exploring. Let me give you an example. The mural that was painted with the quote, "Draw thy breath in pain to tell my story," the words of a dying man. If you look, I mean, it's around that period, the children are all familiar with, of course, the tragedy of George Floyd and his last words where he can't, you know, "I can't breathe." And actually looking at and drawing on such parallels that everyone's exposed to, and kind of the young people in particular are asking questions about faith and identity and their story, and not seeing reflections of themselves in the city, in the murals, in the art we create, and the schools often just not being able to identify how we connect with them through the work that we might impose upon them. You see, in the art and culture but actually looking at kind of innovative ways of connecting. So I would say I really welcome that openness of the team to kind of trust us to look at ways of making those young people identify with this great work.
So thank you so much. There are quite a lot of questions and comments in the chat. There's a group of questions or around the challenges and difficulties of accessing Shakespeare. And I think actually, Mohammed, you've begun to talk about that, as did Indy and Rebecca, and indeed Tom, in the sense of what do I do with all this Shakespeare in this public library? But that's one sort of cluster of questions that we can, we can think about a little bit more. Not only the challenges of accessing Shakespeare, but how has working with this project changed your thoughts about Shakespeare? I think that was Ross Simmons' comment. Jenny Stevens, well known to the English Association. Hello, Jenny. Has said in the chat how she has been following this project for a long time on social media, and I think that's a dimension of taking it beyond Birmingham into the other worlds that we can write. So that is another area that we could think about, is how technologies are enabling this to broaden access. And then there's a question about there's a comment about how inspiring this multimedia presentation and project is for that I think is really important that you all read. And then finally, right at the beginning of the chat, there was a question about what advice do you have for other people who wanted to do similar but perhaps smaller projects? So something about has Shakespeare changed for you, or has the First Folio changed as a result of this project? Has it made you think about engagement and access differently? And a question about how technologies can enable broaden access, as well as advice. So 4 kind of areas. And thank you everybody who's put questions in the chat. So Ewan's got his hand up, so he's going to go first.
Thanks ever so much, Claire, and thanks to all the collaborators, and it does make me proud of what you all did on the project again. Just in, I'll lower my hand now, just in response to the question about how has it changed Shakespeare, and I think, and listening particularly to Mohammed and remembering one of the scenes he showed when we were in the room together in Spark Brook with the children, just to share a little anecdote which I hope might speak to some of that, is that I don't know whether you remember, Mohammed, but one of the things we showed, I mentioned George Dawson, and Mohammed was quite keen to talk about George Dawson, and those were Year 3 students, and he did amazing things, I have to say, much more responsible for that than I am in that room. But we showed them this picture, and it was a monument to George Dawson that used to stand in the centre of the city and hasn't done since 1951. And Dawson stands under a medallion of Shakespeare. So it really said at the centre of the city, this is a Shakespearean city. And I thought that's what we might talk about too with the kids. But Mohammed noticed in the lesson that it was standing in front of a Temperance Hotel, and it was called the Temperance Hotel, and I hadn't really even noticed that, if I'm being honest. And Mohammed, you talked to the students and you asked them how many of them drank alcohol in their families at home, and basically made a connection between Birmingham's non-conformist past, Shakespeare, and contemporary Muslim communities. And then at the end, I think one of the last pictures you showed, Mohammed, was of a poet who goes into schools with Mohammed, and he does I think people on this call know what it's called, but he does an exercise where they produce a sort of instant poem with the class through a kind of cloud of words. And more than one of the children, I don't know if you remember this, Mohammed, but chose the word temperance. And you looked across the room at me. you looked and it was just a fantastic moment. And then we were able to talk about temperance being a word that Hamlet uses. And suddenly you've got an extraordinary electricity between Hamlet, Birmingham's past, contemporary Muslims communities, which frankly illuminated temperance for me as a value, and as a Shakespearean value, as a value in Hamlet, you know, whatever, more than a quarter of a century after, you know, starting to profess Shakespeare. So I just want to leave that as an example of how we were doing something because we wanted to do it for the good of the city, but it did. I think Tom would agree with me on this. It massively changed Shakespeare for us. You know, that Shakespeare will never be the same again for me as a result of working with the good people you've heard from today, and the people of Birmingham they helped us to connect with.
Does anybody else want to come in on the how Shakespeare has transformed me? I thought that anecdote brilliantly captured what happens when collaboration goes well, because everybody's learning something in that moment, and you don't know where it's going to go, but you know that you're all present and taking it in different directions. But Rebecca, come in.
For us, it was an interesting journey that we could never have expected, in that prior to the pandemic, prior to this collaboration, this project, Singing Playgrounds was about bringing children together and singing play in the playground, because it's a good thing. It's good for your body, it's good for your communication, it's good for your, you know, the endorphins, all those sorts of things developed through play. But it opened up, and it continues to open up, this idea that we talked about Bottom's speech and waking up. And he's waking up to this world and he's confused and muddled. Well, that opened up lots of conversations which connected to that, of actually the children wanted to talk about, well, if we woke up now and we're waking up from a dream, let's think that that dream was a nightmare. As in, there's a lot of children with a lot of mental health problems and challenges and worries because of what's going on in the world at the moment and coming out of the pandemic. And it opened up the idea, well, let's turn that completely on its head. Let's say all our senses are muddled, but we're going to wake up into a new world. And what world do we want that to be? So we've been in the nightmare, actually. We're turning it around and we're waking up. And that led us to then, for them to be able to invent new phrases that were going alongside some of Shakespeare's words within the songs, and giving them agency and empowering them to get their messages and be heard. And the final video that we actually made, which I haven't showed you, returned to the "Be not afeard, the isle is full of noises." But then when it broke out into the chorus, it was their words about how to make this world a better place, because of many of the things that Mohammed was talking about, Birmingham and children not knowing who they are, where they belong, or how they connect to others. But actually they just gave us great sense. Of course we should, because we share all of these things, and our differences are, and our sharing and our similarities are. So it continues to be very empowering for us working with children.
Any advice for people who are thinking who are in this call, or who will listen to the film afterwards, who are thinking of doing or something similar, maybe with libraries, different arts agencies, voice, or just on collaboration itself? Do you have some
there's one big lesson which sort of relates to your previous question, but also relates to this, that I'd say. So yeah, in the past, the Shakespeare Library at Birmingham, it had a dedicated librarian, it had expertise in-house, but that you know, we couldn't afford to, you know, that had dwindled completely. So when I came to start working with the Shakespeare collection, which was really through a different collaboration with the British Library, I was like hugely intimidated, because I know absolutely nothing about Shakespeare. You know, I've got a dodgy O-level from 100 years ago, and I have just memories of it being scary and difficult. And then suddenly I had this huge, great big collection that I was supposed to be doing something with no expertise and no knowledge whatsoever. And then through incredibly lucky happenstance, I ended up going to a symposium that Ewan was talking to, and Ewan talked about this collection in Birmingham because he'd done some work with it, and I thought, oh, this is you know, this is brilliant. So this is somebody who does actually know something. So I went to have a word with him, and he was just brilliant. I mean, it's about facilitation and it's about challenging barriers, because my ignorance actually then became a strength. because, you know, I was just positioned as an ordinary person, you know, as typical of probably the vast majority of people in Birmingham. You know, I knew about Shakespeare. I felt I ought to know more about Shakespeare, but I didn't feel I had the authority or the power or the knowledge. And what this project was really focused on was to try to dismantle those sorts of elitism, those barriers to entry, and to really invite people to engage at whatever level they wanted to really put the power in their hands, saying, this is the stuff, this belongs to you, you do what you want with it. And if it's not for you, that's also brilliant. But do that from a position of knowledge and understanding rather than because somebody's told you that this isn't for you. So that was the really big, and that's the sort of the emphasis that was how Shakespeare changed for me, but also that was the big lesson that I learned with how to really utilize these sorts of partners and collaborations to open up difficult collections for popular audiences.
That's a great summary, and it does sound like that these projects and these various strands were enabling for you all in different ways. So I do want to kind of push a little bit on Indy and Mohammed to say, where are you going next with this stuff? Is this a project that's done and finished? I mean, you've got the truck art bus, you've got your murals, you're still working with these communities. Where next? I mean, maybe that's a place that I think is really important for us to hear about, because the challenge of collaboration is where you go next with it as well. So maybe Indy looks like he's gearing up to speak.
My light just went off, so I had to do a bit of movement in the room. But yeah, just on the back of what Tom said, I mean, I didn't really relate to Shakespeare at school at all. So for me, it wasn't something that I wanted to take part in. I didn't think it was for me. I didn't believe that, you know, Shakespeare would be any value to my life moving forward. But this project changed a lot of that for us, and it really made me think about, you know, how historically Shakespeare's already, you know, been in India for decades. So we can't ignore that. But what it's really done, it's encouraged partnerships. It's opened up a lot more doors for us now, because we actually deliver the Arts Award in schools with Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust. So we actually go into schools now. We just did a project with them last year where we, to thine own self be true, we interpreted that in Urdu, in Gujarati, in Punjabi, and we recorded a fantastic video. We went to 4 different schools, so around 100 school children talking in their own languages one of Shakespeare's phrases, and we filmed that and we put that out, and just to encourage more people to know about it and to learn about it. So it's really done a lot more now after the project. Then I guess even while the project was going on, the legacy continues. The bus will continue on now for years, and that exhibition that we take and tour will continue to grow. And we actually made a documentary on Shakespeare's influence on Bollywood, which we also take around place. And most recently, we took it to Beamish Museum way up north. So it continues on, and there's collaboration for us has been the real big winner for us at this project.
I'm very aware that we're coming up to the 2 o'clock and people are saying thank you, and there are more comments in the chat that we could maybe pick up on. So I want to sort of draw this to a close, because these are lunchtime chats. But I'd kind of like to give Mohammed the last word, if you could, your last couple of words or few words, because obviously this legacy continues. But it would be really nice if you could say a few words to bring together this session for us, and to inspire us, a word that keeps coming up in the chat about how we might take this and similar projects forward in the future. No pressure there, Mohammed.
Yeah, no pressure. I'll be as quick as I can. I'm just excited by the prospects of taking some ancient text and making it become a mirror for us on our reality today in a city like Birmingham. Thank you.
That was a brilliant summary. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Tom, Ewan, Indy, Rebecca, Mohammed. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic and thrilling for me session, and a real insight into how collaboration can take us in so many different places within a single place, and but using a single book. So thank you so much. We will be ending the session now. Jenny, do you want to come in at the last minute? I think we're done, aren't we? I'm seeing lots of thanks.
Just to say, that was an absolute revelation. I knew it was a good project. It's just sitting in and listening to all of that. And a wonderful, wonderful project, really. And you can see how appreciative people have been in the chat. But to colleagues who are joining us for the first time, please find out about the English Association, and the recording from this event will go up on our website shortly. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye.